Ah, the Premier League, full of passion, heartbreak, and moments of unbridled joy. It truly brings together fans from a working class background, oil barons in the Middle East, or billionaires from other parts of the world. There really aren't many other sports leagues around the world that can compare. So much so that a trend is emerging from the wealthier leagues from the United States. In the last 15 years, there's been a surge of American investors planting their roots in English football. But with the growing and thriving NFL, the global nature of the NBA, and prominent other American leagues such as baseball, hockey, even NASCAR, why is the English Football League and the Premier League in particular so attractive to our American counterparts? I'm Jordan, and today the long play breaks down some key reasons as to why. We start with a timeline. I'm a Manchester United fan. We famously kicked off this trend when the Glazers used a lot of leverage to purchase Manchester United. Since then, Arsenal, Liverpool, Fulham, Aston Villa, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, and Chelsea have all seen their club become partially or wholly owned by an American consortium of investors. But why? What is so alluring about the Premier League in particular? The first reason may surprise you, and the reason one is because it's cheap. Yes, cheap. Let's take the two most prominent American sports, the NFL and the NBA. The two most recent franchise sales came in the last 18 months. The Washington Commanders were bought by a consortium of American investors for $6 billion in the summer of 2023. The Washington Commanders are not a particularly good NFL team. They've only reached the playoffs 3 times in the past 15 seasons, all 3 of them being wildcard entries, which they lost, and they don't particularly play in an attractive market. Yet, the asset value for that franchise was $6 billion this summer. Similarly, the Phoenix Suns were the most recent NBA sale. Matt Ishbia bought the Phoenix Suns in late 2022 for $4 billion US. Despite making the NBA Finals in the summer of 2021, which they lost, the Phoenix Suns did not make the NBA playoffs once between 2010 and 2020. They have not been a particularly good team for a very long time, yet commanded an asset sale worth $4 billion US. Now let's contrast that to the Premier League. In late 2022, a few months after the Phoenix Suns sold, Bournemouth were bought by an American investor for a reported value of £120 million, a significant reduction in asset value from those seen by fairly comparable franchises in the United States. At the other end of the scale, Chelsea, one of the most notable and successful clubs in recent football history, sold for £4.25 billion to American Todd Boehly. The £4.25 billion figure sounds like a lot, but under the hood, £1.75 billion of that was a commitment from Todd Boehly to invest in the club in the coming years. The asset value for Chelsea was £2.5 billion, and they're one of the most successful clubs in the Premier League era. American investors can get access to Premier League English clubs a lot cheaper than they can in their American counterparts. Doesn't need as much financing. The debt required is nowhere near as high, but the potential opportunities are rife and growing. There's no better way to represent that than with the global nature of the Premier League. The NBA are particularly good at this. The NBA has big presence in the Far East. Basketball is very popular in Europe, and the basketball gold medal is always quite eagerly contested at the Olympics every 4 years. The NFL is a little bit different. Despite being an absolute behemoth in the United States, it is very difficult to take the NFL global. It started a little bit with global games in the United Kingdom and Germany most recently, but outside of the US, the NFL doesn't have the global impact that the Premier League does. Let's look at the global media rights for the Premier League. If we take a look at the trajectory of the Premier League broadcasting rights since its inception, this is a line showing how they've grown every single time the contract has been renewed. This line represents the overseas rights, the rights for the Premier League outside of the UK. Constant growth every single cycle. It's got to the point now where the overseas rights is almost as valuable as the domestic rights themselves. Let's take the NBA. The NBA gets more of its revenue from outside of America than any other sports league. Even still, with it being the best performing American sport globally, overseas broadcasting rights only makes up just over a quarter of its revenues. The commercial opportunities for Premier League clubs are truly global, something that is very attractive to American investors. Todd Boehly is already a co-owner of the LA Dodgers. They are no strangers when it comes to spending money as a sports franchise. However, despite being a co-owner of the LA Dodgers, outside of the USA, it's difficult for him to establish a foothold globally. With Chelsea, that's a bit different. Pre-season tours, European football competitions, players from all over the world. By owning Chelsea Football Club, Todd Boehly is now an international businessman. This is particularly strong for most of the American owners with other businesses that give them political, commercial, and marketing powers outside of their home country of the States. All of this leads to a rapid growth in valuations of Premier League clubs. A brilliant example of this is Matthew Benham at Brentford. Brentford are one of the most amazing success stories in the last 20 years of English football. Matthew Benham, their owner, started his ownership journey in the late 2000s when Brentford were in the 4th tier of the English Football League. In that time, they've risen to the 3rd tier, the 2nd tier, and now the Premier League. But the best part is they have stayed in the Premier League and have transformed their club's fortunes. In the most recent financial accounts posted by Brentford, they posted record revenues of £150 million and record profits of over £30 million. This would conservatively value Brentford now at close to £500 million as a Premier League club based in London, which would be a considerable return on investment for owner Matthew Benham. Incidentally, the Brentford story is an amazing one. I write a weekly newsletter breaking down the business behind sport in the UK and the EU. There is a particularly interesting move that Brentford made to help them in their pursuit of Premier League status. I wrote about this in my newsletter. It's delivered to your inbox every Monday at 11 AM UK time. Link in the description. Subscribe below. Couple the global nature of the English Football League, the increased brand exposure you can gain from owning a Premier League club in particular, and the potential upside on your money makes American investment in English football clubs extremely attractive, especially if you're willing to play the long game at teams at the lower end of the English footballing pyramid. So where do we go from here? Quite frankly, I don't see this trend changing anytime soon. Everton are the latest club reportedly exploring a sale to an American private equity house. David Ornstein reported recently that Watford are exploring a sale too to another set of American investors. There is still too much untapped potential in the English footballing pyramid. Fan attendance is just as strong. Viewership has not dipped. And with European competitions expanding year on year, the upside potential is too great to ignore. As some of the early movers start to exit their positions with very successful returns on their investments, we'll see more and more Americans planting their roots on British footballing soil.